6. Okay, so now we're in the long term. So this is the most complex one. Go up to the very top. Yeah, you're at the top. Okay, this is the most complex one, and you can see your numbers from your savings sheet right on there. You should be able to see them either off to the side or up on top. And now the first two columns are the same, but now we're under long-term investments, which means you're going into the market and you're staying there a while. Okay? You're going to be there 8, 9, 10, 12, 20, 30 years. Okay? And so the discretionary funds, that first column where it says discretionary other, it works the same way. You're going to put it into funds that basically means you can do whatever you want with them. And then on the next one, the column is the 529. If you want to do a college fund that has protected, but do it for a long period of time, that's an option. But you have the catch, which is if they don't go to South Carolina schools, you may not come out well. Now the third option over here is tricky. It's called retirement. So there might be, if you're under age 30, you might have a long-term need for college and building a house or paying for a house, which you need sooner. But then there's retirement, and you really don't need that money for a long time. Retirement, there's some other protected funds or sandboxes. Remember I talked about sandboxes? So there's the discretionary sandbox, which says you can do whatever you want. There's a 529, which is just for colleges that's protected. But now there's 3 more sandboxes, okay? But they're only for retirement. One's an IRA, one's a Roth. It's also an IRA, and then a different kind. And then there's a 401k. How many people have heard of 401k? They're pretty popular. All that means is it's a protected sandbox from federal taxes and state taxes, and so you don't have to pay taxes on what you put in there, and you can deduct in a 401k. If I put in $5,000 into the 401k, I now tell the IRS, if I made $40,000, I tell the IRS I only made $35,000. So in that same year I put $5,000 in the 401k, whatever I make, I deduct $5,000 or however much I put in the 401k, and I only tell the IRS that I made that amount, which means I don't pay taxes on whatever I put in there. So that means I get a bigger tax return because they basically withheld for the $40,000, but I only made $35,000. I only had to report $35,000, so that means I'm going to get a bigger return back. So a 401k has some big benefits in that it reduces your current taxes, so you get returns in the next tax return, and it's protected, so when it makes money while it's there, you don't pay any tax on that. But then and the other catch though, there's a catch to every one of these retirement funds. You can't take the money out until you're 59 and a half. No big deal for Ken, but for some other people that might take a while, okay? And so it's protected, and so you can't get your money. But it's earning interest-free, and whatever you put in, you get the immediate tax benefit. A Roth IRA, that's the Roth one, that's a different sandbox. When you put $5,000 in it, if you make $40,000 and you put $5,000 in a Roth, nothing happens except for any money you make in the Roth IRA is protected. You don't have to pay any tax on it. But then when you're 50, you have to keep it in there till you're 59 again. But now when you take money out of a Roth when you're 59, you don't pay any tax on it. So it's one of those things that on the beginning, you don't get any tax benefit, but at the end, you get it tax-free. So logically, if you think that your tax bracket's going to be higher later when you're 59 or over, you would want to put your money in a Roth IRA, because when you take the money out at a higher tax bracket that you might be in, you can get that money out without paying tax on it. But if you think your money is going to be less then you'd want a 401k where you get the benefit now, and when you take the money out later, you have to pay tax when you take it out. And so these are decisions of which sandbox do I put my retirement money in. Yep.
With the Roth, let's assume you earn $5,000 in interest. Do you pay tax on that $5,000?
No. Every one of those sandboxes up there on retirement are protected for anything you earn. So if the stock market goes crazy and you make 20, 30%, you don't pay any taxes on it at all until the very end for a 401k. When you take stuff out, you have to pay tax.
Do you pay tax on the interest you earned then at that time, or do you just pay on like the principal you put into it?
Only on your gain, not what you put in, just what it earned. That's a good question. So you're only paying taxes on what it earned, not the money you put in. Wait a second, 401k. Now, on a 401k, you have to pay it on everything you take out because it's protected coming in. On a Roth, but your earnings are protected. But you have to 401k, you'll still have to take anything you take out is going to get taxed because it was totally tax protected going in. So they're going to get their money on their way out.
Why would you choose one over the other?
So, for instance, when I'm making more money now than I will later because when I retire, my money goes down. So if I would have had options to do Roth, that would have been a better option because I'm in a higher tax bracket now, but I will be in a lower one later. But if I'm in a lower one now and a higher one later, the 401k would be better. So and if that's confusing, just talk to me afterwards or call me later. But the key for long term is you have to pick a sandbox. You can't put stuff in a retirement account and then want to get it for your boat or car or college funds later. It's stuck in your retirement account. You can't get it back out without an enormous penalty. So you need to pick which of those blue boxes. Then once you do, then you set up a brokerage account. A brokerage account does not mean you need to hire a broker. That does not mean you need to hire a broker. It's just like setting up a bank account. I'm going to go through that in just a minute as we close. And so step two is you just set up a brokerage account. It's like having a checking account. But the catch is usually you need a brokerage account for every sandbox you have. So if you have a sandbox for a Roth IRA, you need to have your own brokerage account for that. You can't use that brokerage account for your discretionary. So you'll need to get another brokerage account for your discretionary. So you need a brokerage account for every type of sandbox. Does that make sense? Sort of? So if you're going to set up an investment account, it's not a retirement and it's not for colleges. You have to get a brokerage account, and that's all you need. And a brokerage account is just like a checking account. And it's just as quick to set up on the phone. But now if you have that, and in your investments, you're trying to save for, let's just say, a house down payment and a car later, okay? That's this brokerage account. But now if you want to get a retirement account going and you don't have one at work, you have to buy another broker. You have to get into another brokerage account. But this brokerage account is going to say IRA brokerage account. And it has rules to it. So the sandbox rules and those catches are all tied to the brokerage account you're in. And so you need a different brokerage account for every type of those blue things up there. So any kind of type of fund that I've been calling a sandbox, those take a different brokerage fund. So if you had a discretionary investments, that would be one brokerage account. If you had a South Carolina fund, that would be another brokerage account. If you had a IRA, that would be another brokerage account. Does that make sense? The 401k, you don't need to get a brokerage account because your employer did it for you already. No. If you're in the funds aren't the sandbox. The sandbox is, are you in a discretionary investment or are you in a special investment like a Roth IRA or retirement that's tax protected? Then you need to get a separate brokerage account for each tax-protected account you have. But then once you have that, you could buy any of those funds down there. So any of those funds are available to any sandbox. So if you have a discretionary one, you can buy any of those funds. If you have a South Carolina 529 fund, sandbox, you can buy any of those funds down there. If you have a IRA, any of those funds down there, a Roth, any of those funds down there, and a 401k, most of those funds down there. Your employer might limit you on what you can buy up under their 401k. They get to pick it for you. And then within that, you can pick off their list. Does that make sense? And so the mystique that it's tricky, the tricky part is you need to know which sandbox you're in, okay, with your investments. Do I want to be totally discretionary and be in total control of it? Or do I want special tax privileges? And if I want special tax privileges, there's a catch to every one of those funds. And you just need to know which catch you want. And then, however, if any of you have a 401k with your company and they do a match, it is better than anything up there. So a guaranteed match of 50% Do you remember those funds? Did anybody see that they made over 50%? You're not going to see that in the stock market. If your employer is going to pay you 50%, do whatever it takes to get the 50% as a minimum. Do that first. Don't even mess around with the market. Get their match, because that is like pure good money right into your account. You cannot beat it. So do matches first. That's priority. Then if you have more money to put in based off the savings plan, you pick a fund. If you don't know, pick a discretionary fund. Just call it a discretionary sandbox, and that's just called a regular investment account. No special tax privileges. And if on the phone they say, do you want an IRA? You say no. If you want to say, they may say, do you want a Roth, or do you want a South Carolina? Just say, no. I just want a plain old investment account. And that's the discretionary. Okay? So now we're going to get into your question real quick in closing. So now we got the savings plan that says how much we need. You understand the difference between short-term, mid-term, and long-term, having to pick your sandboxes to play. So now we're ready to get started. Go to the next one. Not banking strategy, but just jump banking strategies and go to the next one. How do I get started? Okay, there's two pieces here to how to get started. One is I already have some money and I want to get going. The other, if you come down a little bit further, come down to near the bottom. The other one is I don't have any money, but I'm ready to get started. Okay, meaning I got the plan. Now I just need to start going. Okay, so either of these are just the steps to do to get going. I'd encourage you to, before you get into the investments, I would really encourage you to think through your giving to make sure you're giving and you're right with God on your giving before you start getting right with making your own money on investments. So just as a check, I always say ask God to help you. So include God in this. Don't try to do this on your own. Okay, and so from a standpoint of just understanding it, basically just read these are like procedures on how to get started. But here's how simple it is. John, can I use you as an example? How long did it take us once you knew what you wanted, which sandbox you wanted? How long did it take to go from one end to all the way to you're done? 30 minutes. And John could do it. Okay? Yeah, okay. So it's a 30-minute phone call. You can call any of those companies or your other one. Remember on that sheet that had Fidelity, Schwab, E-Trade. I personally use Fidelity, but that's only because my employer uses Fidelity and I'm already up there on my 401k, so it was just easier for me if your employer already has picked one. You just call them on the phone. They have a 1-800 number, and here's the thing. They want your money. They will be nice to you on the phone. Okay? And so you can ask stupid questions and they will just smile and they will take their time. They will not try to kick you off that phone. They will just answer your questions and make sure you understand. But if you don't have a savings plan to know how much you need to save, they can't help you there. Okay? You got to have a plan in order to know what to do when you talk to them. You just can't say, what should I do? Okay? So, but if you go to them and basically say, hey, I have $287 a month that I'm trying to put long-term in an investment account. I need to get step one said, remember back on that thing, it said get a brokerage account? They will lead you over the phone and get a brokerage account right over the phone. And then you have your checking account ready and you give them their numbers there on your checking account. They'll make a draft into your brokerage account. A brokerage account is not mysterious. It's just a checking account. So you're just transferring it from one checking account to another one, but it's a brokerage account because they have all sorts of spy eyes into that account to make sure that no one's monkeying with that investment money. Okay, that's not according to... So the reason they call it a brokerage is because there's extra eyes on it, there's extra auditing procedures, there's extra all sorts of stuff on that thing to make sure your money's protected. That's the only mystique behind brokerage. And so basically the money goes in there, and here's the trick. Okay, I'm going to walk in different spots. So I have $5,000 and I'm in your checking account. I'm $5,000. So I get transferred into this new thing over the phone called a brokerage account, and you just give them the banking numbers and they'll transfer it in. And so now I'm $5,000 in a brokerage account. I haven't bought anything into the stock market. I'm not making any interest sitting here in a brokerage account. A brokerage account is just basically a non-interest bearing account. Then once I have a brokerage account of $5,000 in here, then I have to buy something like one of those funds. Can you, John, can you go back to those, the investment one? Remember those numbers, FX, NOX, and those things, okay? And blended is what if you have under $50,000, which is most people when they're getting into the market, I would encourage a blended fund of some kind. And then if you want to take risks, you can go over and put a little bit in mid cap or small cap. See those percentages underneath where it says 25% large cap, 25 mid, 25 small? That's for long-term investing. Those are the percentages. Just pick. So if you had $1,000, you put 25% of it in each of those different kinds. And basically, they'll do that right over the phone. So I'm sitting here in the brokerage, I'm $5,000. Then I just bought $1,000 of blended, or $5,000 of blended fund. Now I'm in the market. This fund is now making money. You have to buy the fund. And then if I'm going to buy another $1,000 in small cap because I'm risky, I go from back over here to checking account to the brokerage account, now over to small cap, and I can buy that, or to mid cap, or to international, okay? You have to buy the fund from your checking to the brokerage, and then the brokerage, you buy the fund, okay? Now, what you can also do over the phone, and which I strongly encourage, is make it all automatic. When the employer puts money into your bank account, at the same time, tell the investment company you call, like Fidelity, when you call them, tell them to draft it from your account the next day, so it goes into the brokerage, and then tell them on that same day, buy into the blended fund. And so that you can get an automatic buy as opposed to you having to deal with it every paycheck. Because you really don't want to mess with it. You just want to make it automatic and just make it happen. And so you can buy automatic buys right into your funds, and then it just happens. You go to work, you get paid, all your investments just happened. You don't have to even think about it. And that's what I encourage you to get to. Is get to an automatic flow where you don't have to think. So you have a plan, you put the plan one time into action on the phone call, it takes about 30 minutes. Once you set that up, then spend another 15 minutes with them to set up those automatic buys. So the automatic buys just happen, and they can do that right over the phone. And they will love you. They will treat you very nicely. Okay? If any of you are intimidated with that, just call me and we'll do a three-way over the phone with them. Okay, and that's okay. It's not like that's a violation of something. So it's just a phone call, and then once you're set up, then you're done. You just go to work. It happens, and that in your investment plan will start to actually come to fruition. All right. So one more thing called banking strategies, and then we're going to end. Banking strategies. It's a little, I hate to gag you with a diagram, but here's a good closing diagram to gag on at the end. Sharon and I would get married. Prior to us getting married, I just knew where my bank account was all the time, man. I could keep that in my head. I knew my cash balance all the time because I was the only one taking money in and out. And if it wasn't to the number, I knew the bank messed up, okay? I got married, and the number was different. It was like, I thought it was this, but now it's this. And so now I'm looking at Sharon like, what happened? And then sometimes I forgot that I did something, but I thought it was her. And then, we get into this marital conflict about money, and that's just not a fun position to be in, okay? So basically what I suggest is you have your employer deposit money in what I call a master checking account. So the concept here is you have multiple accounts. And these banking accounts do not get interest-bearing, get no interest free checking. So these are free checking accounts. And get your employer to put it into what I call the master account. Then have the master account, if you're married, go to two other accounts called his and hers. Go to your monthly sheet that you did with all your expenses. Remember the monthly model that you did with your income and all your expenses? And mutually sit down and say, I'll take that one, you take that one, you take that one, you take that one, I'll take this one, you take that one. And you just basically tag who's responsible for those things in your marriage. And then you add up all the ones that I'm taking, and that goes an automatic transfer, because you can, with your bank, just put an automatic transfer. It's very easy online. If you've never done it, it's simple. You can just call them. You do an automatic transfer from master to his account for that amount of money, and now I'm responsible for it. I get a debit card, and I just have to stay within my weekly allowance, and I know what I'm responsible for. Her account gets you add it up, it comes into how much a week, goes right into her account. She just has to stay within her account. And now if I see some kind of Twinkies on the counter and some new pair of shoes, I don't care. Because I know she's managing her account, and if she sees me with some new software and a cool gadget, she doesn't care. As long as we stay in our budgets, that's all that matters. And if you use a debit card, do not get the overdraft protection, because if you ever go into overdraft, they're going to charge you like $40, which is an insane amount of fees and penalties. If you get debit cards, just stay within your debit card, and it's a beautiful thing. Okay, and so that's a model. But then off to the right, I talked about it earlier, you can have a giving account, and money can just go into your giving account where you can have a giving card, and that's how pizzas were paid for tonight. So it's just like, oh, that's just a giving card, and it's done. And it's one of those things that you don't even have to think about because there's money there. And so now you just say, God, is that something you'd like me to do? God usually says yes. He sometimes says no. But so it just allows you to be a giver, and you don't have to think about it. It just lets you now just have fun giving. And so that's a giving account. And then I strongly encourage bill pay. Bill pay is an automatic online thing. You don't have to pay postage, and it keeps an electronic record of everything you do, so you can get a very good analysis of your money later. And that's also why you use debit cards, is to get a good analysis. If you have a hobby or business, do not put it in your normal checking account. You will not be able to keep up and find out if that hobby or business is making money or losing money unless you make it separate. And any money it makes, you put in it. Any money that you need to buy something comes out of it, not your other ones. And you'll find very quickly whether it's making or losing money. If you put it into another fund and put deposits in this one, and sometimes you put expenses in this one and mix it all up, you will never know whether you're making or losing money until it's too late and you just now can't make a mortgage payment. Okay? And so have it separate, and it can be a beautiful thing. Then that brokerage thing is what I told you, where it goes off to the left there. You just make an automatic transfer into your brokerage account or a brokerage accounts if you have multiple sandboxes. Okay? And then it has to go again to buy the funds. Remember, if it just put in the brokerage account, that doesn't help. It has to actually buy a fund. So you put it in the brokerage and have to buy something, and you make the buy something automatic. Then you basically have a completely automated world in which my allowance is being done in my account, my spouse's account, my hobby is isolated, I'm having a giving account, I'm having my brokerage investments are all being done automatically, my bills are getting paid automatically, and the whole world just works without me having to stress out about my money. Does that make sense? So that's, in a nutshell, the main things I was going to talk about tonight. But I'm running a little bit late, but is there any questions regarding banking strategies or how to get started? Okay. Okay, how to get started is really easy. It's just a phone call, and it takes about 30 minutes. You'll need your checking account, social security number, date of birth, that kind of stuff. But then basically they're going to want you to know, once they get into the brokerage account, they're going to say, what fund do you want to buy? And that's when you pick one of those FFNOXs or whichever one you think is a good blended one, and you just tell them I want to buy that account, and you're done. Well, no, then set it up to be automatic, and then you're done. All right, that's a whirlwind. So any questions on loan modeling or investments or banking strategies or wills or whatever? All right, we're done. Oh, yeah.
I think I work for Ameriprise doing financial planning and investments.
Yes.
If you do get an E-Trade or Scottrade account, be careful and don't day trade it.
Oh, yeah.
They'll crush you with fees.
Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, here's the concept with investments. You take it from your checking account, put it into your brokerage account, buy a fund, leave it alone. Okay? Don't get into, hey, this day was up, so I'm going to sell it, and tomorrow it's low, I'm going to put it back in the market and try to make more money, and then when it goes back down further, I'm going to buy it into it, and then when it goes back up, I'm going to sell it. If you start getting into day trading, remember how many days you lose was 340, how many days you make is 40, okay? And 40 was to break even, 20 was to make some money, and 10 was, so you're getting into high stakes poker when you start getting into day trading. And that's what he's warning you about. Once you buy the fund, leave it there till it meets your objective. If you're doing it midterm or short term and you're sort of stretching into some risk, once you make your objective, get out of the market. The market will hurt you if you're in short-term or mid-term and you're in those kinds of funds. A blended fund is not designed for that. However, you can cheat in there if you're a little flexible. But then once you make your objective, you're out. That's a great question. Any other questions or thoughts, concerns? Okay, well, let's close in prayer. Father, I just thank you for this time, and I just pray that it would not be overwhelming, but it would just be something that they can see as really, just an artificial barrier. It's just something they just need a half an hour to do. And I just pray that they would be a frog that jumps off that log, that they would actually, a month from now, look back and say, my gosh, it's all working. It's all giving you glory. And thank you for that peace. And Father, I just pray that you give each of them peace with their finances, that they're doing what you're wanting them to do with their wealth that you've given them. In Jesus' name, amen. Awesome. Thanks.